Welcome into another edition of Gas. I am Gresh. He is Jason Anik.
You were playing everybody and we're winning the game last night.
The head coach is fighting people on the sideline.
What do you got for me?
I know you're a part of the Tight Pants Society.
No fucking play is that a gimme, right?
Proving that even we can get up early, for crying out loud. I don't know if my voice will make it through as I'm excuse me, as I'm barfing up a lung, for crying out loud. It is Gas. I am Gresh. He is Jason Anik. And yes, the hour early start today for us because we've all got a bunch of things to do. And Jay, it's so weird. We're walking through the wilderness of sports without football anymore.
I know, we come at you at 10 a.m. Normally we're live every Tuesday at 11 a.m., but we're old. And I don't know if I'm allowed to curse anymore, right? We've been off the cursing train, but we're old as F. So us going at 10 a.m. ain't no thing, is it, Gresh?
No, I mean, it's easy for you because you're still in the age of life where you have like little people and you have to kind of get up in the morning and get them up and going or whatever. The only person I'm responsible for is my wife. Who is dealing with the shingles, by the way, which is she's miserable and painful and all that kind of stuff. Big spot on her arm or whatever. And we've been traveling all over the place. And, I'm starting to hear the NCAA tournament talk, right? We're a couple weeks out in front of conference tournaments, but, the NCAA tournament's right around the corner. There's going to be a ton of betting there. And now we turn to the NBA, really, with the NFL. Getting ready to go into the shorts and shirts Olympics, which is the combine this weekend. But, the Celtics are now starting to make a push. And I would dare say, Jay, I think after the Patriots, it feels like the Celtics are where you and I land on, wow, that is something that I can watch that actually brings me enjoyment. Like when they were pumping the Knicks once again, I know they didn't beat them by 20. It would have been the third time this year. They would have beat them by 20 plus. But just watching the Celtics round into shape right now, have the full complement of guys out there, it's kind of like the warm blanket I need to sort of get through winter.
It's a great way to look at it. And I've gone on record many times talking about I'm as interested in the NBA regular season maybe as the Celtics, meaning I'm disinterested a little bit. My younger brother, not my twin brother John, the UFC broadcaster, but my younger brother David and my mom watch all 82 of the Celtics games, all of them, every year. I can't do that, right? I can't get into it. But the little bit of a lull and the little bit of sort of a hiccup, right? They seem 18-10 at home, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah.
So some of this sort of hiccups gives me a little interest when they do start to figure things out as they are. But for me, I hate to say it, it is going to come down to health. Whereas last year, they had Porzingis here and there. I think he started the finals but didn't finish them. He was quite valuable. I think they're going to need their full complemented roster to go back-to-back this year. So I'm enjoying watching what I'm seeing, but it's still going to be a couple months before I really know if they can do this thing.
Well, the Celtics are taking on Toronto tonight. They're in Toronto as 11.5-point favorites. And does the number one seed really matter? Not only do you think it matters to this team, Jay, but does it matter to you as a fan and an analyst of this group?
I think it matters for the Cleveland Cavaliers who sit in that number one seed much more than it matters for the Boston Celtics. And I believe it's a 6-game deficit in the loss column. Yeah. That's a lot to make up with some really good teams. Celtics, I just talked about their home record. They're 23-6 on the road. I think it matters not for the Celtics. Cleveland, I said this, if Donovan Mitchell had been healthy last season in the postseason, that would have been a far tougher series for Boston. It was shaping up to be a tough series as is. So the number one seed, I don't think matters too much for the Celtics. However, I think Cleveland's going to be a tough team to beat. So I think that number one seed for Cleveland's important, but I think the Celtics, if they are who we think they are and they are healthy, it's not going to matter where the games are being played.
Yeah, the Celtics are 23-6 on the road, which is the best road record in the NBA. Cleveland is in at 20-6, and the only other team in the NBA with even 20 road wins are the Oklahoma City Thunder. And to me, that's where you really you expect good teams to handle at home, but the teams that are really good are the ones that go and win on the road. And tonight the C's are overwhelming favorites. I was sniffing around the MVP stuff last night, just looking at some of the awards, because I know we're going to get into that. And Jason Tatum is all the way to a 250-1 favorite. it just feels like Jason Tatum might never be able to hit the timing right to get in line to win an MVP, even though this guy puts up numbers and his team wins at a level where you would think he would be a perennial candidate. But this year, he is among the longest of odds at this point with about 25 games to go.
Yeah, at least longest odds in terms of the handful of top players. Forgive me being distracted by the Ime Udoka graphic with the mask on there in between those two guys.
I
threw me off a little bit.
I thought it was another Ime Udoka photo that you might have found. Him walking around pantsless in the Celtics facility.
But, the MVP discussion, right? Even if you look at the NFL this year, where Lamar Jackson, first team All-Pro, right? Certainly the number one player in the league, but Josh Allen wins the MVP and deserves it. Maybe wins and losses creep into that. But I think the MVP is an interesting thing, right? Jokic, forget Tatum. Jokic, right, is plus 340 right now. I mean, his numbers are just insane, right? Averaging a triple-double, second, third, and third in those three categories in the league. I mean, just unbelievable. But, yeah, I don't think Tatum sniffs it. Seems like SGA has just been given this award.
Yes.
In a way, it seems kind of like Josh Allen, right? Where it's just like, all right, it's his time. Whereas I think Jokic, frankly, is similar in the Lamar Jackson conversation. How do you not give it to him? Jokic's numbers are just insane. What do you have, 19 dimes last night?
Yeah, it's crazy. And even Embiid, who's losing his mind in Philadelphia, even the 1 year that Philly rose up and played well, their best player, which was Embiid, was able to win the MVP. And I kind of feel like there is a we take you for granted sort of bias working against Jason Tatum in some of these situations. However, our guy, Payton Pritchard, is still the favorite to win Sixth Man of the Year. I even went to FanDuel to kind of check this one. Payton Pritchard minus 175. Everybody else is plus money. And I guess for an award like that, it goes to show how getting off to the great start really helps you. And there's DK right there. Payton Pritchard minus 170. Malik Beasley plus 450. DeAndre Hunter plus 450. I guess we can wrap that one up that it's going to be Payton Pritchard minus him getting hurt.
We joked about this on a previous episode about how he wrapped this thing up after the first week of the season. These awards are funky, whether you're talking about NFL Coach of the Year, which is really like when you do things that are not expected of you, but the Sixth Man of the Year, I often feel like it does fall to a guy, oh, your team just won the championship, oh, you'd be a starter anywhere else. It's amazing how there's not even a market here. Just fascinating to me. But when the Celtics are at their best and they are starting their best five, yeah, I mean, this guy is that dude. So I think it makes a lot of sense. Some of these markets, we look at the Defensive Player of the Year, Victor Wembanyama, right? Who I believe was minus 700 or whatever he is, goes out for the year. Now this market's kind of wide open. You got a couple guys there. Jaren Jackson plus 130, Evan Mobley plus 140. I saw this at FanDuel, a little bit flopped. Mobley at plus 130, Jackson Jr. plus 135. Talk to me about this market being more wide open now with Victor Wembanyama gone.
Well, a lot of people like Jaren Jackson Jr. and Mobley will get some run because he's on a good team. And, with Jaren Jackson Jr., this is the wildest story developing in the NBA right now. So a couple years ago when the NBA did their collective bargaining agreement, somehow they got in some kind of fakakta rule that if you either I appreciate the sell on that one. Thank you, because I want to slide that in there. But they put in this rule where if you are an all-NBA player or if you win an award like Defensive Player of the Year, you're then eligible for the Supermax. Now, the problem is it's these dopey media people who are the ones that are voting on this. So, Jay, if Jaren Jackson Jr. wins Defensive Player of the Year, he's then eligible for the Supermax, which would then take I'll just do the ad number. He would then be eligible for $197 million more on the contract that he could get if he ends up getting Defensive Player of the Year or gets all NBA this year. So it's like the Jaylen Brown jump. Remember Jaylen Brown a couple years ago made all league, and then it was, he can get the Supermax. Well, for Jaren Jackson, the difference is $345 million to I think it's like $147 or $150 million. So I did some national radio over the weekend. I got to talk to Frank Isola, longtime NBA guy. And I said, I know him a little bit. And I'm like, Frank, I don't know what you're voting for this year, but, how do you feel about voting for Jaren Jackson Jr.? And he basically said, I hate that we're in this spot where we, the media, need to vote on these in an organic and natural way. And when you think about the side effects, let's call it, of what it can do for guys' contracts, I mean, Jaren Jackson Jr. ain't going to go broke in theory, but man, all because of 50 or 75 media guys, this dude could end up with almost $200 million more in money if someone wants to pay him that kind of dough.
And Dallas moving Luka to Los Angeles takes $116 million or whatever potentially out of his pocket.
Away from Luka.
Exactly. I have a lot more NBA I want to talk to you about, but I got to rewind back to what was your weekend like last weekend, right? Didn't you do, I mean, talk to me Saturday, Sunday, and then we got to talk about a FaceTime call. We'll get back to the NBA, but I need some juice.
Well, on Sunday, I ended up doing 4 hours by myself on Mad Dog Radio, and that was kind of a barren, sterile wasteland at times. And then I had like a 2-hour break. So I get done with the show. I walk downstairs, and of course, someone in my house goes, "Oh, I'm hungry. You make me something to eat." I'm in between shows, so I get something done for the people who need food, and then I do 2 to 6 on Infinity Sports Radio, and then I stopped down, and then I did ESPN Radio from 8 to midnight with a guy named Donald Ware who works down in North Carolina. He's actually North Carolina A&T is now in the CAA, the old league I played in. So we had a little commonality there or whatever, but we were taping interviews, before the show and everything. So I was pretty much constantly in the, rubber room here in the Puzzle Factory, just trying to bang out as much radio as possible. I got some 3 to 6 over the next 2 days on Infinity Sports Radio. And today I'm a college football guy. A little bit later on, I'm heading out to UMass for their signing day show because they're trying to jack things up now that they're going into the max. So, yeah, after this, it's shower up and go drive 4 hours all the way around to do. I
love it. Speaking of driving, did you do that drive down south on Saturday?
I forgot that. No. We did that on Thursday. Thursday of last week, my wife and I drop off in-laws at the airport. We have a golden retriever with us, and we did I think it's just under 1,200 miles straight through. We basically left the airport of Providence at 5:15 in the morning. We pulled into Amelia Island, Florida at 10:52 p.m. that night.
Wow.
And then got my in-laws set up, and then we turned around, hopped on a plane, and came back on Saturday, and then got all wrapped up in the NASCAR, which I know that you were too.
Not at all.
No, you're not.
I don't want to talk about NASCAR, but I do want to talk about a FaceTime perhaps that you got late last night as well before we get back to the association.
Sweet Jesus. So hold on. Let me get the timestamp on this. So 12:48 a.m. last night, I end up getting a phone call from Albert Breer of the MMQB and Sports Illustrated and all that stuff. Now, Brother Breer is good friends with my former teammate, Darren Rizzi, who has said on this show, of course, if Riz didn't get that coaching job, where's he going to go? He's going to Denver. We were way out in front on that. There were a betting market. We would have killed that one on where's Rizzi going to end up. So I end up, and I did put it in the text string. I don't know if Cody can pull it up or not. If not, I will, there we go.
There it is.
There it is. And you can see the timestamp, 12:47 a.m., and it's Bert Breer and Darren Rizzi in a watering hole somewhere in Indianapolis. Now, by the way, Jay, this is, I think, the 3rd year in a row this has happened where these guys are drinking and they're out having fun, and I'm in bed getting ready to, work tomorrow and all that kind of stuff. And then here are these two, liquored up boobs calling me in the middle of the night, trying to get me to answer so they could just flip me off. That's really what it is. I'm surprised this photo did not have a middle finger in it like Stone Cold Steve Austin.
I believe it. And look at Riz in the background, just looking looking like he's in pretty good shape back there too. But, we got to start taking this show on the road. We got to get down to Indianapolis. We got to be in the building. We got to be in these guys, whether it's Radio Row in February or taking it forward to the Combine. We got to keep this thing on the road, man.
Oh, it would be a ton of fun. I'm trying to figure out if I can get down to Miami for what is a really nice pay-per-view card that is developing. And I don't want to stooge anything off because the place that I'm working for has not said anything about it yet, but I know there is at least one national radio network that is very interested in doing some specialty programming around UFC pay-per-views and stuff like that I might be a part of and that you might be a part of.
All about it. And we got Montreal in May, which isn't that far from you either. But let me get back to the NBA real quick, right? And sitting down watching the Celtics versus the Knicks, and I understand as a Celtics fan, right, when that game in the regular season does get me going a little bit because it's New York and because the Knicks are, in the conversation now. But Knicks 0-7 against OKC, Boston, and Cleveland, I guess the top three teams. So not really reminding me of the Miami Dolphins in the NFL, where when it comes time to it and you got to face the great teams, not really getting it done. But so do you look at the Knicks? I mean, I'm curious how good they can be defensively, but how good do you think the Knicks can be? And do you think they could really make some noise at the top of that Eastern Conference?
Jay, I thought the Knicks were really built to kind of take on the Celtics, and as of right now, they're just no matchup. And it's not even full boat Celtics, right? Like early in the year, there was no Porzingis around. Celtics whacked them. Then they get Porzingis, they whack them again. This time, if the season really pressed on the accelerator, they would have won by 20 or more points again. So I think the Knicks had sure as hell better hope that they match up with Cleveland in the Eastern Conference semifinals and not the Celtics, because it's very evident that however they were built and whatever it is, the Knicks just don't have the bandwidth to be able to deal with everything the Celtics throw at you. And it's just interesting, Jay, to me that we're sitting here talking about Payton Pritchard, 6th man of the year, and he's really the 7th or the 8th guy.
Right.
When you think about it, because the Celtics have 6 starters that they kind of rotate through. I don't know. I think the Knicks are tough because their coach will drive them, and Jalen Brunson does have some dog in him. But to me, Karl Anthony Towns, meow, we're in a big spot. Meow,
I couldn't agree more, and I've been so anti-cat, so it makes me laugh. I guess when Mitchell Robinson comes back, maybe that can change things defensively. Certainly, I think he handles the pick and roll pretty well on that side. It'll be interesting, though. The Celtics really are legit. I want to look at some of these. Look at the Western Conference for a little bit as well, right? Jimmy Butler, ever since Jimmy Butler gone to the Golden State Warriors, a little bit of a different juice, right? You get him and Draymond Green walking through the building. They feel like they're going to win games. But if you look at, I bet on the Lakers plus 750 or plus 850 to win the West, right? So you look at them now, plus 750 to win the West. OKC, the favorite there, right? What was Denver? Yeah, 6-1 to win the West, I think is still interesting for Denver. But the Warriors, I saw Warriors 17-1. Where's Golden State on this board? 10-1.
Golden State, yeah, 10-1. They moved up.
17-1 on FanDuel this morning. Maybe I'm missing that, so shop around. But I think Golden State really is interesting to come out of the West. Look, OKC is chalk in the same way SGA is chalk at minus 550 to win the MVP. Everyone loves OKC to come out of the West, but I think this Western Conference is getting wide open. Some of these matchups that could manifest themselves. I mean, the Golden State is not even in the playoff picture at this time, right? The Clippers are in that 6th seed. I think it's going to be dynamite in the Western Conference. I'm not going to be surprised if it's the Lakers or the Nuggets or even Golden State upsetting the apple cart there. Your thoughts?
Well, if you ask me right now, even though Golden State, I do believe, are 9th in the standings in the West by record, I think they're the 3rd best team in the Western Conference now. And it didn't take very long with Jimmy Butler, I think, to be able to see that and figure it out. And, Jay, I do think that for some guys, for some superstars like Luka, it becomes a little difficult. There's a transition there to sort of get that guy integrated into the Lakers. Whereas with Jimmy Butler, it was boom. We know the sense of urgency. I've been here before. And Jimmy Butler's also in his good boy stage. He's Bingo. That's the thing. Give it 150 games in Golden State, and then I'm sure you'll start to see them pecking away at each other. But right now, for my money, if you told me take somebody outside of Oklahoma City, I'd be very tempted for Denver because they do have the unicorn in Jokic. But if I'm going to, say throw pizza money on a future or something like that, right now the Golden State Warriors are pretty juicy because if they get hot and they get right, there is no reason why a team led by Green, Steph Curry, Jimmy Butler, and others, they can, if that group stays upright, they can compete with anybody in the West.
I agree. And when you talk about Jimmy Butler getting to the free throw line, and I forget who brought this up. It might have been Tim Legler, but the 60-second break, if you will, for Steph Curry in that spot, right? Where Butler gets to the line, right? Steph Curry catching a blow there. And as he gets older, right? And certainly Steph Curry has never been a phenomenal defensive player, even though the effort's always there, right? Teams go at him on that side of the ball. So it's not as if he can just take off possessions there. So for him to get a little bit of a breather as Jimmy Butler puts a couple points on the board at the line, it's flipped everything. Some of the plus-minus numbers when Curry is on the bench, I think it was minus 90. It is now plus 30 since Butler's there. Fascinating. I talk about situation and chemistry and fit. And yes, you get a Jimmy Butler. I guess the contract was a lot to do with this, right? They re-upped him when he came to town, which I think has created that sort of, just that good environment in the locker room. So I'm all in on Golden State right now. And if they are going to make one more run, it's got to be now. Curry's not getting any younger.
Yeah, and look, I don't think the Warriors are in it for the Pacific Division, but I do wonder about, what kind of number is there now on the Warriors making the playoffs? Because they're still, as you mentioned, Jay, they're kind of in that play-in, area right now. I think ultimately they will end up locking in a playoff spot to where they don't have to jack around with the play-in, but it's evident the Golden State Warriors are kind of back to being the Golden State Warriors a little bit. And that's a team, go ahead and sleep on them. Like, seriously, go ahead and sleep up. Like, if you're Luka and the Lakers and you don't bring the A game against them in the postseason, there's a real problem. And look, I don't know about you, Jay. I like the way the Lakers are coming together. But in the end of the day, I just remember what I heard from people in the Celtics organization last year about Luka, and he'll turn it down. So if other teams attack him, like imagine Jimmy Butler being the guy to antagonize Luka Doncic in a playoff series. Luka's never dealt with anything like that guy where he's signed and he's motivated. And that will be really, or maybe even LeBron at this point. Jimmy Butler's pushing 40. Jimmy Butler won't turn down trying to deal with LeBron all day long either. So I think it's fascinating if those two teams matched up in a West semifinal.
Oh, give me all of that if it comes. And I still think Denver is going to be heard from. A lot of people think they can't necessarily keep up with OKC. OKC blew a huge lead last night to Minnesota at home. So going to be interesting to see the Western Conference. I think the Eastern Conference really, when you get beyond Knicks, Cavs, Celtics, not much to talk about there. But as Celtics fans, right, we're rooting for the team to win a back-to-back championships. Not easy to do that. But I do like when you sort of circle it back to the Celtics, 23-6 on the road. They've been getting everyone's best shot. I love those splits as a fan. All right, they go on the road, they're handling their business, sort of sleeping a little bit at home. But I believe they're sort of figuring things out at the perfect time, and I think they're going to peak at the right time, and I believe in Joe Mazzulla as much as any coach in the league. By the way, there was something where Mike Vrabel invited Joe Mazzulla to practice. I should have pulled up the tweet, Gresh. I know we're only coming at you once a week, but I love how the coaches in Boston and New England all sort of this tremendous brotherhood between those four guys all the time.
Well, I know that Joe Mazzulla is the one that kind of pushes that a little bit. And, our mutual guy, Alex Cora, is big in sort of holding that together as well, right? Because when
Belichick and Doc Rivers were tight. I don't mean to interrupt you.
No, but they were. But now it's like Alex is the one who's kind of holding that together. I mean, when you really think about it, hold on here because it's Cora Mazzulla. Yeah, Mazzulla is now the second most tenured Boston manager / head coach. With Belichick being out now, the Bruins ended up making a change. And with the Bruins, it always feels like, oh yeah, there's the guy who speaks funny. Oh yeah, come on, you're a part of the club as well.
Like Gary Bettman, the convention.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, so hey, come on in. But no, I love that, and Vrabes, of course, will jump right into it and be a part of it. In part because I think Mike Vrabel and Joe Mazzulla, I have a funny feeling, are going to become fast friends. It feels like personality-wise, the way they like to dig in, they're both pricks in their own way, but they're still, decent human beings. I could see those two guys becoming fast friends.
Well, I love it, and I love how the players have always supported one another, and going. Nothing like seeing Drake May sitting courtside at a Celtics game. Give me all of it. So that was interesting to me.
Those free seats always help too. You'll see some every once in a while. You'll see some goofy radio hosts down there just sitting there. You'll be like, how the hell did that guy get a ticket?
So you go back-to-back weeks with the skull cap, huh?
Yeah, I did. I woke up a little late and
What does that mean? You don't have time to do your hair? I mean, that's hilarious.
Yes, that's really what. No, here's what it is that if I'll be real about it, right? For someone who has a coif like you, if I do it now and I spray it all up for doing TV or whatever, and I put these headphones on, now I have a massive indentation in my hair, my TV hair. So I had to wait until after So I'll shower up, I'll do my hair, get ready for like 12:30 to get in the car. So that way, whenever I get out to Amherst, they got a little shirt or whatever that'll probably be too tight for me to wear. And, we went through that yesterday. Believe me, we were trying to figure out the wardrobe or whatever. If I could bring this thing, if I just slam UMass on there, I'd just wear this thing on camera. But no, it's all about the whole getting TV ready. So you got to time it up and pace. I don't want a dent on my head. It's going to be,
I'm with you.
It's going to look bad enough.
So you said spray. Does that mean hairspray?
Oh God! Oh, it's putty.
What do we go with, like spray? A fucking can? Sorry, I cursed.
No, you're good. A little bit. You know what it is? It's hair putty. So you do the Mr. Miyagi, right? Yeah. You throw it in there and shape it up a little bit, and then yes, you got to spray the hell out of it. I'm a biohazard when it comes to that. Really, like if somebody walked up to me or say, hold on, because I'm 6'5", so I'm trying to think. Like if Andre the Giant lit a cigarette near my head, it would just go poof, and he'd oh ball, sorry. It'd be terrible. I don't have it like you, man. A
little pomade or whatever they call it, in there. But we are certainly not spraying it into place.
Well, yeah, I got it. You have to have it hold because you never know. You never know if the wind's gonna blow. I could go out to UMass and be, hey, it's 50 degrees. It's warm out here. We're doing this outside, and then everything's blowing around. It's a big old mess.
So Gresh is a lean 6'5", 250 today, right? Back to his playing days. But let's talk a little NFL because that's our favorite sport, so we can move past the association.
Yeah.
So always a lot to talk about, whether it's free agency, whether it's draft, whether it's quarterback. So you want to start with Matthew Stafford?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, because my thoughts on tight pants Sean McVay. He's got a Hall of Fame quarterback, but for some reason he's got to let this guy go to go find someone else or maybe bring in Aaron Rodgers for a year. I think it's interesting, though, that the Rams told Matt Stafford and his agent, hey, go sniff around. And, of course, you see right there, the Aaron Rodgers next team, the Rams are at plus 190. But it led to asking the question. I got into it a couple different times over the weekend, Jay, and I want to bring this to you. For just one season, for 2025, right? And I even use like the Pittsburgh Steelers as an example of a team that needs a quarterback that's pretty good. It's got a lot of things in place, right? But for just 1 year, are you going Matt Stafford or Aaron Rodgers?
It's an easy question to answer if we're not talking dollars. It's Matt Stafford, right? But it could be twice as expensive. It's Matthew Stafford every day of the week. For me. And it's not even, it's not going to be a long handicap, if you will, right? Wow. I just think there's much more in the tank at this stage. The mobility of Aaron Rodgers, I think, is just not what it was, whether that's since the Achilles or maybe just because he's getting older. Where Matthew Stafford, I just don't think it matters as much, right? So I think Matthew Stafford, I'm well documented. If there's no snow falling in Philadelphia, I think there's a very good chance the Rams win that football game in the divisional round and host the Commanders in the NFC Championship game this year. I think it's really coming down to the dollars. I think Matthew Stafford thinks he can get north of $100 million for 2 years. I believe it's $27 million that's potentially on the table in LA. So I think it comes down to dollars. And I think if they could somehow meet somewhere, let's say 2 years, 80 or something like that, that potentially could work for Matthew Stafford. If I'm a Rams fan, I definitely want Matthew Stafford coming back. You can be sure. But I think Stafford is looking at the quarterback market, thinking he's still elite, looking at these guys making 50, 60 million, saying, I'm not going to do it for 30 million, where maybe they can get Aaron Rodgers for 30 million. But if we're talking about hoisting the Lombardi trophy, I think you got a much better chance, no matter what team you are, if Matthew Stafford's at the helm.
Wow, I'm shocked. That was a stand-up, full-throated endorsement of Matthew Stafford, and I'm not anti-Stafford. But if it's 1 year, I'm taking Aaron Rodgers, because when Aaron Rodgers is right, he is a better player than Matthew Stafford. And I think history has proven that. Now, here's the hard part where you got to kind of dig in a little bit with Aaron Rodgers, right? Is he focused, or is he concerned with wiping out some of the narrative that's out there that he's only about him, that he ruined the Jets and things like that? Because we were just talking about Jimmy Butler, right? But if you get a properly motivated Aaron Rodgers on a good team with people he respects, that's a big thing. Like I know Rodgers said, a team that wants me and a team that's good. Well, that team better also have some gravitas at head coach and general manager. That's why someone like McVay, that to me, there's, for as much as I bang on McVay, there's no question Aaron Rodgers would listen and fall in line. And McVay would probably be a little more lenient than, say, Mike Tomlin, who that dude walked up to a Pouncey brother during a game and was like, what the F are you doing? It's about us, not you. And Jay, I don't know if you remember this game or not. And if I mentioned it to you, then just slap me in the head and tell me I mentioned it before. But there was a game in Green Bay where Aaron Rodgers got kind of rolling a little bit. I think it was on Monday Night Football. And Tomlin, they're playing the Steelers. Tomlin from the sideline bangs a timeout to slow the roll of Rodgers. And Rodgers is notorious for unstrapping the chin strap. And he turned around and he looked at Mike Tomlin and just kind of half grinned. And Tomlin was pacing the sidelines, almost grinning back at him. And it was like, I know that you know that you know that I know that you know that I know type thing. And I just wonder if Aaron Rodgers in a situation with a coach that ain't going to take no guff, who is going to clearly communicate to him, here's what we do here. I really wonder if the Pittsburgh Steelers could take an AFC championship type jump if they get the right Aaron Rodgers.
But you know, when you talk about an organization, here's what we do here. The problem is the we is Aaron Rodgers, right? The tail wags the dog. I love that Aaron Glenn said, no, we're not going to do this. And you're not going to be on McAfee if you're going to do this, right? Aaron Rodgers lives in Malibu, California, right? Would love to go to the Rams, right? Devontae Adams wants to play on the West Coast. So are you telling me, Gresh, forget all these other teams, that if you're a Rams fan, I understand for the organization, paying Aaron Rodgers $25 million for 1 year and getting Devontae Adams too might be better than just having Matthew Stafford for $45-50 million. But if you're a Rams fan, wouldn't you rather, just for that team, would you not rather have Matthew Stafford as quarterback next season than Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah, if it's a 2-year window, then I would assume the Rams fans would like Stafford and would like him to stay.
But what about you? You asked me for 1 year, right?
Oh, and yeah. So, no. I'm going Aaron on a 1-year buy-in. I'm just going Aaron Rodgers
on the Rams next
season. Oh,
season.
yeah. Yep. If it's just for 1 year. Wow. Because we know the Rams are one of those teams who will be like, throw all the draft picks away. Who cares? Go get this guy, that guy, and all this kind of stuff. I mean, the biggest thing for the Rams is all of those guys staying healthy together, right? The running back situation, Cooper Kupp, other people within their offense. If they stay upright, man, they got a big chance to hit. But if it doesn't, then you're kind of the Jets once again. And that's the hard part about these older quarterbacks, because Stafford's a guy who gets dinged up as well. But if you're going to roll, if I'm going to do the short dice roll in 1 year, I'm going Rodgers. If I have to work it out in a 3-year window, then I'm probably going Stafford because he's younger, but I don't really love it. I would rather wind back the clock a couple of years closer to where, because I think Aaron Rodgers still does have MVP level football in him. We got to remember 2 years ago.
Wow.
He had a terrible injury.
I agree. And maybe it is taking some time for him to come back from that.
There you go.
But I'll believe it when I see it. But I also think chemistry and situation, and I think injecting Matthew Stafford into a different locker room, let's say he moves on from LA, I think potentially can be more seamless than the Aaron Rodgers show. He's the most talented quarterback I've ever seen play, maybe the quarterback I like to watch more than any, Aaron Rodgers. But I love me some Matthew Stafford. And in a year that I thought they should have been sellers, the Rams, maybe they were trying to sell Cooper Kupp, they shut me up at every turn. So, I'm part of Tight Pants Society. I believe in it. Hey, look, they won a Super Bowl together. I'm not ready to give up on that quite yet.
So if the Rams end up keeping Matt Stafford, let's look at this quickly in terms of Aaron Rodgers. I then think the market for Rodgers becomes really interesting because there's a lot of buzz that Tennessee wants to make a run at Rodgers in free agency. I talked to the guy who covers the Titans, Teron Davenport, great guy. And he'd give me a little bit of intel of how much they like Abdul Carter down there and things like that. But they also, because of a Callahan connection to, I think the son, Brian Callahan's the head coach down there. Bill Callahan, longtime offensive line coach, was in Green Bay. So again, we go back to the incestuousness of the connections. Aaron Rodgers could end up in Tennessee, or he could end up in Pittsburgh. Two completely opposite situations, where one, it would be Rodgers kind of going on faith to Tennessee, but with Pittsburgh, it is the No. You need to come in here and win now. Like, there are championship expectations. It is the whole, I think Pittsburgh might be the one place, Shay, where the tail doesn't wag the dog. The dog
good
wags
way to
the
put
tail.
it. It's just fascinating to imagine Pittsburgh, even last year, no matter how well Mike Tomlin handled that quarterback room with Fields and Russell Wilson, what did it get them, right? What did it really get them? So to me, the idea that Aaron Rodgers is going to come into Pittsburgh, I guess I just feel like the Aaron Rodgers post-Green Bay experiment already failed in New York. I do think he's going to want to come back and maybe not go out like that, but I do think the situation is going to need to be ideal. And you talk about a team like Tennessee, no matter how interested they are in Aaron Rodgers, what gets him to sign on that dotted line to go there?
Apparently, he has a place there too. I guess that's
another.
Nashville. There you go. I mean, and
right.
If you're a
and
guy
so, what are we doing? Are we just collecting $40 million to right? How much? I don't know
well,
how much. Really, go ahead.
Here's the other part of this, right? And this is the part that gets a little gross. I do believe the state of Tennessee or Nashville proper are building the Titans a stadium. So next year they'll be looking to sell luxury suites. They'll be looking to, you know what I mean? They're going to hit the market in trying to sell this new stadium. And if you're coming off a year with Aaron Rodgers and you got a big star and you got people interested and, oh my goodness, he is Aaron, and there'll be some ladies looking at him too. I'm just saying, from a business standpoint, it could end up being right for the Titans, but maybe not completely work out for them on the football field. I'll tell you what, if the Titans sign Sam Darnold, I know what's going to happen. That thing's going to sink real quick. Sam Darnold is a free agent, Jason Anik, and they're talking about this guy getting $30 to $35 million a year, a la Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to me. I'm glad that I don't have to talk about the New England Patriots being in that market for Sam Darnold. But let me ask you a question. J.J. McCarthy, who got injured. It's so fascinating to me. Is this dude a slam dunk to be a franchise quarterback in the NFL? Because everyone's anointing him. We all trust Kevin O'Connell, but it really is interesting. And you and I don't believe in Sam Darnold. We would move on. I don't want to speak for you, but we would move on even if we were the Minnesota Vikings. But you got to pay a guy to do it, right? And so Sam Darnold, let's say, what is he, the 14th best quarterback in the NFL? Where do you place him, and where is the market there, right? You're either worth 50 or 60 million, or are you Jacoby Brissett and you're worth 8 as a backup? So where is that middle market? I wouldn't be interested in Sam Darnold, you can be sure.
Yeah, I'm not interested in Sam Darnold at the price point. Now, again, if I'm working on a one-year situation, I don't think Minnesota is going to franchise him. But, they could threaten to do it and then say, yeah, but we'll give you, 1 for 20 or something like that, which would be doubling his money from last year. And then you're still insulated at the position. I think Minnesota's got to go with McCarthy. They made the draft pick. He got hurt. You had him sit for a year. He was able to learn. You got to go with him because Minnesota, they've got to keep replenishing on that roster. They're now getting to the point to where they're paying Justin Jefferson big money. They're paying the left tackle. Is it Darashaw? He got big money. He's one of the best left tackles in the game. So you're going to have to start to make some choices. And I just don't know if Minnesota can take, what did they take, $10 million last year and put it into Darnold? And we figure they got to go up to $25 million, and he might not even be the starting quarterback. I don't know. But I do feel like there will be a team that gets left out of, say, the Aaron Rodgers race. And if you're correct, and Stafford goes nowhere, and he just, goes and sniffs around and the Rams end up keeping him, then it really becomes Aaron Rodgers and Sam Darnold as the next guys on the market. So if you're Pittsburgh, do you want to go down that road? I don't know. If you're Tennessee, maybe you're looking to fortify the quarterback spot. If you're the Raiders, are you interested in Sam Darnold? That might be another team who looks at it and says that for 2 years, we can do worse than Aaron Rodgers. You know what I mean? So maybe they're a team that's in it for Rodgers and something else opens up.
The whole thing's interesting, right? And you think about being fans of different teams around the league. Let's say you're a Seahawks fan, right? Geno Smith going to hold up that trophy and have confetti falling? I just don't see it. No. So it's really fascinating, interesting with the quarterback markets. Unless you have like a guy like Drake May, we don't know what the future holds, but he looks like he could be a top 5 quarterback someday, doesn't he?
Yeah, you don't have to worry about it. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing right now for New England is that at least they've got a guy. Now they got to go continue to add depth. And if I'm Mike Vrabel this week, I'm just putting the good mouth all over Joe Milton. All over Joe Milton. We're basically saying, come give me something, you sucker. Which is really a pump up Joe Milton, this Joe Milton. I've never seen a guy this size. And blah, blah, blah. Pump him up for crying out loud. Go Roberto Luongo back in the day with the Bruins and the tire pumping so that somebody will give you a 4th round pick for this guy and you can get him out of here.
Your point's well taken, and it sounds really smart. For those you don't know, Joe Milton, Patriots' 3rd string quarterback that, played quite well in a very small sample size in week 18. And when we talked about the Patriots' backup quarterback situation, and certainly we both agree that having a veteran come in, we talked about Andy Dalton, and then later that afternoon, he got signed back to Carolina. But having a veteran coming in makes a lot of sense. But I actually don't want Milton to maybe get out the door, but I know that's sort of dumb. Drake May's the guy. You gotta strike while the iron's hot there. So I agree with your point. And
you need a vested veteran. You need somebody who is a caddy. Like you said, Andy Dalton is the pro. I like Jimmy Garoppolo in part because he knows Josh McDaniels. He knows the area. I think he would blend into the offense. Then there's a couple of guys like Russell Wilson and Justin Fields and well, good luck. I think the ship has finally sailed on Justin Fields. People are giving up that he's an uncrowned Super Bowl champion. And Russell Wilson, he'll end up somewhere because he's got gravitas and he can play at least a little bit. And, he's clearly a declining player. But Russell Wilson will feel like the 3rd place prize for any team that doesn't get Stafford, Rodgers, or in this cycle, Sam Dalton, which is kind of crazy.
Gosh, Russell Wilson, what a fascinating career. If he doesn't throw that interception, Malcolm Butler doesn't pick him off, and he has 2 Super Bowl rings. His career is so interesting, so up and down. There were stretches last year in Pittsburgh where he really was playing super efficiently and looked like the guy. It's interesting. I really think as great of a guy as he may be, I just don't think he fits in any of these locker rooms ever. Seattle, Pittsburgh,
That's the problem with Russell Wilson is that, he's what's the old line from the Kings of Comedy with Bernie Mac? Talk to people like they down here, like she up here. That's Russell Wilson. It's like he up here talking to people down there. And I think that, I think Mike Tomlin maybe humbled him a little bit. We'll see where those guys end up because the more you get into it, the more there aren't that many options. And people are souring on Shadir Sanders, which I thought would happen. The more you look at the tape, the more you realize, he's the quarterback, but he still needs a ton of work. Tom Brady is apparently smarting on him, having sat with him a couple of different times, but I don't know if, the new partial owner of the Raiders is going to pull the trigger at say 6, 7, or 8 for a player that high. There aren't a lot of options. And this is a year where thank God you have one because you hold on to him like grim death because there just aren't a ton of places to be able to go. Hey, quickly, I only ask this because it's Brad Marchand, right? And even though you might not be the biggest hockey guy, there are a lot of people in Boston who know Marshy. They like him. They've seen him grow from a 4th-line rat to a 2nd-line scorer to ultimately the captain of the Bruins. And Jay, in no other sport do we get the romanticism of he's been a Bruin his whole career, and even though he's a declining player, he has the right and he should stay here to finish his career. There's no other sport where we do that. We don't, Tom Brady would have been the last one in football for crying out loud, and God knows that guy left playing, great football when he finally walked away and retired. Do you have any feelings whatsoever on what could be either the extension of Brad Marchand's career in Boston for us to watch him wilt away, or the Bruins actually flip the guy to kind of get something for him at this point in his career?
Patrice Bergeron played his whole career in Boston, and we love when guys play their whole career in Boston. Even a guy like Paul Pierce, who I would have loved to see him play his whole career in Boston, his trade was part of bringing back the next regime to hoist another banner. So Brad Marchand, he's turning 37 in May. Do I think that could be a tremendous amount of value for him on the market? Absolutely. He's a great postseason player. But if I had a vote, I would want to keep him, and I believe in some of that stuff nostalgically, keep him in Boston for his whole career, right? Even a guy like Ben Roethlisberger, who I don't believe played anywhere anywhere other than Pittsburgh. I love that. Just sort of ended at the right time. Sometimes it can end at the right time. But with this particular player, I think that the Bruins are at a time where it's kind of the perfect time to maybe get something for this asset right now. So from that standpoint, I mean, look what happened with Ray Bourque, right? When won a cup with someone else, with Colorado Avalanche, I think was the last game he ever played. I wouldn't mind rooting for Marchand to go do something else, especially in a situation where he's not choosing to go somewhere else. It's bringing something else back to the team. But that number is 63 going up in the rafters. So for me, if he stays in black and yellow forever, I'm happy.
He's staying here because the Bruins really missed their window. If we're going to be honest about it, they're trading him with his contract expiring. If they were going to move him, they should have done it last year. The problem was they've been doing this, hey, we're going to be competitive every year. And when both your starting defensemen go down, when your top line defenders in Hampus Lindholm and Charlie McAvoy go down for different reasons, you know that the year is not going to end well. Now, there could be, and this is what I would advocate for, a little bit of skullduggery. Here's what I would do. If I were Don Sweeney, I go to Brad Marchand and I'd say, where do you want to go play? Where would you, do you want to go try to win a cup somewhere else? Like, if you don't want to go, I won't send you anywhere. However, here's what I'd do. I'll trade you for something that will make it enticing for you to come back. That's what I would say to him. Flip him, but cut the deal with him to bring him back next year. Have it set, ready to go. It's kind of a winky-winky. You hope he honors it. If he doesn't, it kind of eliminates the problem. And then if you're Don Sweeney, you could say, hey, we thought we were going to work this out. And if Marchand comes back, you still got assets to do so.
I absolutely love it. It's a great plan. And I do think he would honor it and sort of want to come back. So.
Oh, yeah. He can go rent a place temporarily. Hey, don't forget, you can get Jason Anik everywhere at Boston Anik. Get me at The Real Gresh. Make sure you follow our guy, Cody Merrow, our producer, Cody_Merrow on Twitter or X. That's where you can find him and all of his whatnot out there. Is there a give me a little bit on the latest with Remember the Show here and Bully B. I'm seeing stuff on the Twitter of, rumblings of the whole next Bilal Muhammad fight is kind of set. It looks like it's going to be in Montreal. It's bad timing for me, that Montreal card, unfortunately. That's a week I have to go to Vegas for a vending convention with my wife. So we're flying back literally Friday night, and then the next night it's up in Montreal. My kid's got a final that day, so he can't go. It's a road trip. We could have just hopped in the car and went up there, but all of us are shot quad. But tell me a little bit about your other podcast that you do.
Cody, listen to this guy already making excuses not to be in the building for Bilal Muhammad's first title defense May 10th against Jack Della Maddalena. Cody will be there. You can be sure Cody will be there. Quick hop skip from New Hampshire.
I got to go to the NAMA convention.
But Bilal Muhammad and I host a show Thursday nights on the Anik and Florian podcast produced by Cody called Remember the Show. We did it last week with John and Kenny when a lot of UFC fights and news was announced. The most important being Bilal's championship fight, but they announced the Miami fight card. So it's going to be an exciting couple months for the UFC. My brother John is actually doing back-to-back events. He's going out there for the fight night this weekend. Manel Kopp fighting. My brother's going to be in the octagon doing post-fight interviews for the first time in many years. It's a two-man booth. John and Dom Cruz this weekend, then UFC 313 next weekend. So we're pretty excited.
How did John get wrangled in to do just a fight night, for crying out loud?
Well, it's interesting. He doesn't do too many of the fight nights, but he will be doing that one. So this weekend should be exciting, but I'm excited to see him back in the octagon. Some news came out this morning. Dan Hooker, I guess, broke his hand, so he's out of the fight with Justin Gaethje. I don't believe there's been an opponent announced yet. But that UFC train, I love how Dana White does the schedule where sort of it's the holidays, a little bit of downtime, and then the January is a creep. But now it's just you're smashed in the face with fight card after fight card every weekend. They're going to be, rolling for, to the near future. So I love
the depth of the Miami card, based on what I've seen. Holy mackerel. That is one of the, and they always UFC brings a really good card to Miami. But my goodness, like the depth of the card, even the prelim fights are really good. And wow, I can't believe it. I gotta text my kid and be like, John's actually working the fight night this weekend. Normally it's that, the dude with the funny accent or whatever that like Bisping will make fun of. By the way, I don't know if Bisping is as cool as he seems to be, but I love Bisping as an analyst. And I love that him and DC bicker all the time. Like, it feels like the one guy, and I know Dominic will give it back to him too, because Dom Cruz, him and John are very close, but like Dom will give it back to anybody. But there's something there with DC and Bisping that just makes it that much more entertaining, because those guys can't help kind of effing with each other.
Yeah. Oh, I love Mike Bisping, and he is sharp and quick-witted and an agitator. What's interesting is Dominic Cruz and Bisping go at it a lot.
Yeah.
But what's fascinating is when the camera's off, there's no agitation, right? They're both real good energy, real good people. But then when all of a sudden, so oftentimes we're all hanging out and everyone's cool, and then the headsets get on. I'm like, why are you guys going at it all of a sudden?
Oh, it's fantastic. I love it, and you feel bad for Tom Cruise, had to pull out of that Seattle fight, and everything that went down with Cejudo as well. We might have to unpack that at another time, because the free agency is right around the corner in the NFL. And I know we're a tad ahead on this a little bit, Jay, but when you start to think about who are the must buys for the New England Patriots, you can just go by position, but I think you got to get the right player. And here's what I did a little bit last night. I was sniffing around on the Patriots coaching staff, because I wanted to see who came from where, right? So Tyrell Williams, the new defensive coordinator, he was in Tennessee with Vrabel and then ended up going to Detroit, right? Yeah. So not only does he know those Tennessee guys, but he knows which Detroit dudes might end up being gems. So I wonder, Vrabel was in Cleveland. Williams was in Detroit last year. You had a couple other guys on the staff from a couple of other outposts. And it just made me wonder if that's going to lead us to the road where the Patriots might end up doing some free agent shopping. And I'm now convinced, even though you and I love Travis Hunter, I also think we're kind of smarting and feeling that he might not be at the board on number 4 for the Patriots.
No way.
So I think they got to go out and sign Detroit corner Carlton Davis. That fixes your number 2 corner spot. Tyrell Williams already knows him. And in digging in, here's what Davis is really good at: man-to-man. The Patriots last year with Christian Gonzalez wanted to play a lot of man-to-man. And the going rate for Davis should be about 14, 15 million. Hell, he paid John Jones $9 million last year. But this guy's going to come in and be a starting corner. And then you can have your Marcus Jones and Alex Austin and people like that to be able to fit in from there. So I want to see the Patriots go out and go grab Carlton Davis. And I'm using the D coordinator as the conduit, wanting to get that done.
I like that. It's a fascinating way to look at things, because it's a relationship business. You can be sure. We talked about Gerard Mayo's lack of relationships other than in that organization, and how he was incapable of really building a staff, grabbing Dante Hightower off the streets, his former teammate, right? Before we talk about some of these other free agents, I just want to rewind back to the Patriots offseason last offseason and what they did in free agency, because, frankly, wasn't happy with what they did. And they had the 3rd most cap space last season in free agency at $68.9 million. So just to quickly read you the names, Gresh, of who they signed last season, right, in free agency: Jalen Hawkins, KJ Osborne, Austin Hooper, Antonio Gibson, Chucks Okorafor, Jacoby Brissett. It goes on. Nobody else worth mentioning. Re-signed Kendrick Bourne, Hunter Henry, Alex Austin, Tyron Wheatley Jr., Onwenu, Jalen Rieger, Uche, Anthony Jennings, Kyle Duggar, Ramondre Stevenson, Jabril Peppers. So I wanted to ramble through some names because nobody jumps off the page. And when we look at these free agents, you mentioned Carlton Davis, and I know we're each going to give you a few more. But my thesis statement is, if Elliot Wolf can do okay, and he does scare me, but gosh, I feel as though in the same way they maybe couldn't have gone wrong with the head coach, whether Ben Johnson, Mike Vrabel, it couldn't have been. I feel as though in free agency, it's going to be hard to mess this up. I really do. I think there's so many different directions they could go. It's going to be hard to mess this up. I like the Carlton Davis thing. Any other guys that you would like to see them go after?
Well, Ronnie Stanley, the left tackle from Baltimore, I know that they could probably overpay him on a shorter term deal. He's 31. He has dealt with some injuries. But that's a guy I think that, look, Jay, they have to get a starter there. They have starters across the board already. Some of them you may not love, but if it's Caden Wallace at right tackle, Onwenu at right guard, David Andrews at center, Cole Strange or Laken Robinson, the kid that they drafted at left guard, you bring in Ronnie Stanley. Now you have an offensive line you could at least put on the field. Then do you draft another tackle? Do you bring someone else in? That Will Campbell kid from LSU, they're talking about him maybe ultimately playing guard. I'd forgotten about this. Remember when they drafted Nate Solder? They still had Matt Light. Nate Solder at 6'7.5" was playing guard his first year. Then they kicked him out to left tackle. Maybe something like that could be in the offense.
Well, speaking of 6'7", the Rams left tackle, Alaric Jackson, undrafted out of Iowa in 2021. Apparently he's a better pass blocker than run blocker. I think he's a beast. I'm not so sure Ronnie Stanley is leaving Baltimore or they're letting him go. I do think Alaric Jackson is interesting for the Patriots, but I think that they would be paying big money for him.
Interesting. So if Stanley isn't available, the guy I want the Patriots to shift to is a guard. Will Freeze, F-R-I-E-S. It looks like fries, but I do believe it's Freeze. A kid from Indianapolis, right? He started about 25 games. This dude was a 7th-round pick from Penn State. Who would know all about the Penn State guys? That would be the guy who maybe coached there at one point in time. Bill O'Brien was right up the road. Still, and I know the timing of it doesn't work, but there's still those tentacles there in Happy Valley. Also, there the Penn State offensive line coach is Phil Troutwine, I do believe, who played a million years in the NFL and has a ton of connections. But this guy, Will Freeze, he's a impact guard, and he knocks people in the dirt. He is the kind of physical guard, I think, that a guy like Mike Vrabel would want. So look at it this way. If you're going to draft your left tackle, go fill your other guard spot. You still have position flexibility, and Freeze is only going to cost you about $12 to $14 million. Stanley might be in the 2022 range, but that's where we end up, or we as fans, meaning that's where the Patriots assume the risk of it's not the lock, stock, and barrel high-end player that you know you're going to get automatic production of right away. This kid still has to be coached up. But, man, if you fix your interior with the way that Drake May can move, now you're setting up a Pat Mahomes situation where the mobility of sliding around in the pocket or getting out is there because you're firm up the middle.
You know, when I said earlier that I think they almost can't go wrong. Look, they could throw up all over themselves and select the wrong guys, but having the type of money they do, I just think there's so many directions you can go. I'm going to give you a couple on the defensive side of the ball. A couple guys I've mentioned on the program before, but a couple buy low guys. Hassan Reddick, Dre Greenlaw, right? I'm going to talk about them individually, right? And there's a lot of names out there, but Hassan Reddick, right? Jets traded for him. He refused to report, but I just think you can really buy low on this guy. He only had 1 sack last year, but forgetting last year, the prior 4 years, his sack numbers, 12.5, 11, 16, 11. I think there's a lot to prove. I think maybe you get a little bit of a discount. I don't think he's going to cost as much as a guy like Josh Sweat, who just hoisted a trophy in Philadelphia, and maybe a little bit more value. To me, Reddick may be a little bit more valuable in the short term. Dre Greenlaw, right? San Francisco linebacker, right? Another buy low. He had the Achilles injury in the Super Bowl, then comes back last year. He did play well when he returned, but only 2 starts, and then he suffered a calf injury. That San Francisco defense looks different when he's out there. He's great in pass coverage. I really want a guy, even a guy like Zach Bond, who I think you might have to pay more in Philadelphia. I'm looking for that vocal leader in the linebacker position. What we've talked about Christian Gonzalez and his ability as a leader. I know he's up and coming, but I'm looking for leadership as much as I'm looking for maybe a stud performer.
Greenlaw really intrigues me because they need a middle linebacker who can make an impact. They need a linebacker who can be a guy that you find out there. I think it's like Nick Bolton, I do believe, is the guy from Kansas City. But, little 6'3", Greenlaw is only 6'2", 230. And then you look at someone like Bolton, more of a weak side linebacker. I really like where you're going with that. I like the Philly players, but man, oh man, they have what I would call Damian Woody disease written all over them, meaning they've won championships. They've been around for 2 for 3 years. So they're going to get overpaid by somebody because they're a world champion and they're bringing something to a team. I don't think the Patriots necessarily need that as much. So I love the fact that you didn't go in with Baum and ended up going with Greenlaw, because I think that's a fit. And I trust that now a defensive coordinator who's a D-line coach, who's been in a couple different places in Tyrell Williams, he'll be able to identify sort of the cheaper end defensive tackles who could come in and do what he needs them to do. It's nice to have the flashy pass rusher, but how does Williams want to run his front? Is he going to be like Belichick and what Mayo tried to do, with a fat body in the middle, then other guys that are versatile? Or are we going to maybe a little more of a Tampa situation where the nose tackle is more of a backside shade and Christian Barmore's lined up over a guard and you're turning that bleeper loose?
Yep.
So strategically they got to figure out kind of what they're going to be. But I'm like you, Jay. I think there is room for one of those edge guys. I admittedly was looking at Khalil Mack because I think it's one of those dudes where as a pass rusher, he's still really good. He might not be an every down player, but if Reddick wanted 20 million last year, if that number starts to get to 13, 14 million, the Patriots might push away from the table and say, who's in that next tier that we can bring in and coach up? And this team needs veterans desperately. They need veterans badly. And bringing in new guys with a fresh voice, the way you are, the coaching staff, I really think is the way to go. I love your Dre Greenlaw pick.
No, and the Khalil Mack thing, you sort of sold me on that. I had sort of rejected that out of hand. And quickly, I know we got to get out of here, but with the receivers, right? From a free agent standpoint, I still think they're going to address this in the draft. I don't think Travis Hunter is going to be walking through that door, unfortunately. But you see some rumblings about maybe the Patriots be interested in a trade, whether Chris Olave or DK Metcalf. Certainly a guy like Chris Olave, the Patriots can go find and work out a trade for a guy like that. I am all in. DK Metcalf, I'd be a little less interested in from a locker room standpoint, even though I do want them to get a big man. But, we haven't talked about T. Higgins at all on this program today, and I think that's appropriate because I still don't think he's coming through that door. But from a receiver standpoint, your thoughts quickly.
Yeah, look, I'm on Chris Godwin because I think he's the guy that ultimately is going to be there. He's 29. Even if there is a little decline in play, I do think that Godwin would end up being a good buy. And I'm with you. I'm starting now to work this as if T. Higgins isn't going to be an option. Because even if they franchise him again, you're talking about giving up the number 4 pick in the draft to go get the guy. Like that's not happening. So I'm starting to look at next on the list. I don't want to turn the punch bowl in Steph Diggs. Amari Cooper is mildly intriguing, but I know what he is. If I'm going to get a free agent buy with the group that I'm kind of looking at even there, that's why Chris Godwin, I've always landed on Godwin because it feels like if you're going to give me that group, if I know Steph Diggs isn't crazy, then I'm okay with bringing him in, but I think he is. So give me Godwin.
I like it.
I mean, I just, and I'm with you. You said this last week and it made me think more and more. T. Higgins, man, I just don't think he's coming available. I'm with you. If it's there, they're ready to jump. But as an analyst and a fan, I'm not going to allow myself to go down that road because I just feel like I'm going to get in trouble.
I agree. And if I do agree with sort of what you said there, though, if he does become available, I think the Patriots will have as good a chance as anyone to go and get him. But, it's kind of sounds silly that I think they can do no wrong. I think they are so well set up because they now have a guy that can play quarterback and because they have a head football coach and they have all this salary cap space, it could be a desirable destination. I think they're going to be, look, do I look at them as a Super Bowl, do the Patriots as a Super Bowl contender next season? No. But if you're asking me today, do I think they make the playoffs? I might say yes.
Well, the free agent class is out there for them to go grab. And, here's the other thing too. This is going to go back to probably a Belichick type way of doing things, meaning Bill would once in a while dip his toe in the expensive end of the pool, right? He went and got Steph Gilmore and came in and was an NFL Defensive Player of the Year. But I wonder if it's going to be more of the B to B plus level guys. Maybe you again, if T. Higgins is there, that's an A plus level player. But I just wonder if we're going back to the names will be good. The contracts will be fair. If these guys come in and all play really well, man, you can have yourself a 10-win season in year 1 with Mike Vrabel. I think that strategy could. Now, people hated it when it was Belichick, but people are ready to embrace it after 1 year of Dopey Mayo and Elliott Wolf. And, maybe the old way with Bill wasn't so bad after all. And you get like a Bill 2.0, who I'm sure will be okay in spending a little bit of money on the right guy, but I still think they're going to throw out contracts like manhole covers. They're still going. I know, I hate to say it. They're just here's the thing. Does Robert Kraft have $200 million just laying around right now to be able to put into escrow for guarantees? Because that's kind of what we're talking about.
Right.
And how do they mitigate that? You do it by guaranteeing salary. There are other ways to make guarantees where the owners can kind of wiggle around of coming up with the cash right away, or at least they get it back at the end of the year. But if T. Higgins is available, they're going to make the push. They'll make the strongest push. Whether he comes here is another story. We've never gone down that road of the would T. Higgins actually come here. We just assume that because there's a lot of money, T. Higgins would come here. But in reality, is this the best place for him to go? Is a place for him to make the most money? But is it best for his career? We may have to parse through that on gas.
I like it.
My kid just texted me telling me to fix my hoodie, but he doesn't realize the show's over because we moved it up an hour today. And we did go into a tiny bit of overtime. What we can get to, should they abolish the tush push later on? I'm sure that ain't going nowhere when the competition committee meets in some bar in St. Elmo's in Indianapolis to, sort of just cursory discuss these things. Got anything? You with Bilal this week? What do you got this week? You got anything? Next week off?
I'm gonna be watching fights, getting ready to go. It's wheels up next week. I'm not gonna be joining John for the fight night, but I'll be getting out to Vegas for UFC 313. So we'll come back at you next Tuesday, 11 a.m. live with Gas, and then I'll be wheels up the next day.
Oh, look at that. There we go, baby. Well, that is it for us. Great job by Cody Merrow for hanging out and producing this one and making sure that we look as only we can look. Oh, by the way, happy birthday, Ric Flair. The guy made it to 76. I would have lost that bet a long time ago. If you would have told me someone who would not make it to 75 years old, Ric Flair would have been one of the people that I would have bet on and thought I was going to make big money. So happy birthday to the Nage. He is Jason Anik. I'm Gresh. We will see you next week here on Gas. Make sure you rate, review, subscribe at The Real Gresh.